The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. November 14, 2014. Chapter 3, The Unicorn and the Pony. The glowing eyes of Ganondorf felt like they were staring into my soul, and attempting to drain away both my spirit and my magic. If this is the power that this man possesses, then this kingdom is going to be in a lot of trouble. There was something about him that seemed familiar to me, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. His appearance. Why does it have me thinking of Equestria? I then collapsed to my knees due to his eyes weakening me with their stare. Never have I felt this way before, and to be honest, I was scared that I was going to die. As I continued to suffer, a single word appeared in my mind. That word. It was a name. One that I've never heard of before. But somehow I'm connected to it through my connection to Equestria. That word. Tyrek.
Why are you staring out of the window, Ganondorf? Oh, forgive me, Your Majesty. I thought I saw something outside just now, and it piqued my curiosity. Please allow us to resume our talks over the alliance between your people and mine. There was something unusual about that child who was staring at me just now. I could sense a powerful magic deep inside of here that is not of this world. How could a mere child possess a magic like that? She is one that bears watching closely. Now then, Your Majesty, I believe that my allegiance to you and your kingdom shall be most beneficial, for it will allow you to finally unite all of Hyrule under your banner.
Replied Tyrek.
My only concern is how your people will behave once the alliance is in place. As I recall, when I originally traveled to the Gerudo Valley in order to meet with you, I was denied access to your fortress by some of your warriors, said the king. A most unfortunate event there, but I assure you that it was not intentional. My people have long believed that men are weak with the sole exception of their king whom they praise. They most likely believed you to be not worthy of their time or mine, so they forced you and your entourage to turn back empty-handed. Had I been there to greet you, things would be much different than they are now, said Tyrek. Where were you when this happened? Asked the king. I was taking care of something in the desert, and it kept me away from the fortress much longer than expected. But enough about that, for we must focus on what will become a reality. With this alliance, you shall have full access to the Gerudo's fortress, and my people shall acknowledge you as being equal with me. In return, I shall grant you my loyalty and be there for you whenever you have need of it. The alliance between the Hylians and the Gerudo is the final piece you need to complete the unification, replied Tyrek. Then we must go over some of the smaller details before we can forge a pact, said the king. Ah yes, those small details can end up being rather problematic if they are allowed to linger for far too long. You are far too easy to manipulate, Hylian king. You believe that I shall grant you an alliance? It is my destiny to reign over this world, and upon claiming the Triforce, my desire shall become real. I suppose that I have to give some credit to your daughter who has her suspicions of me, but you have silenced her to the point where she can do nothing. All I need do now is to bide my time and wait for all of the pieces to fall into place. In the meantime, I suppose I could do with some nourishment by absorbing the strength of your guards. Let us celebrate the birth of this new alliance with a dinner, Your Majesty, said Tyrek. Are you all right? Asked Twilight as she struggled to snap me out of it. Since he was no longer staring at me with those eyes, I couldn't feel Ganondorf's presence anymore. However, I was still feeling some sort of after effect which took me a few minutes to recover. I see that you were able to sense the evil that was coming from him, did you not, Sunset Shimmer? Ganondorf has such terrifying power. What he wants is nothing less than the Triforce, and if he gets his hands on it, he will conquer our kingdom and then the world itself. My father believes that Ganondorf desires peace, but he desires to rule over all that he surveys. If he poses such a large threat to the kingdom as you say, why do you allow him to simply get away with his actions? Why not just banish him before he can do anything that would destroy the peace your father strived to create?
I asked.
What do you mean?
Asked Twilight.
Where I'm from, Equestria, there were those who wanted to conquer it by any means necessary, and while many of them were defeated by the power of friendship, a few were banished to other worlds where they could do no harm. Of course, there was one villain who chose to exile herself because she felt that she had been betrayed by her teacher. If only she hadn't been tempted by power, her life wouldn't have taken a turn for the worse. Her teacher didn't betray her, but rather the student was too indulged in herself. A shame really, as she had so much promise being the student of Princess Celestia.
I replied. I made sure not to mention to Twilight that the villain I was referring to was none other than myself. Despite having changed a lot since those days, I still regret not following the guidance of Princess Celestia, and allowing my heart to become blind to a horrible vision which I strived to see happen.
Unfortunately, there is not much that can be done about Ganondorf. As the king of the Gerudo, he has a lot of political influence which grants him certain privileges and immunities when it comes to matters of state. As long as he chooses to maintain these values, nothing can be done to stop him,
said Twilight.
So right now Ganondorf is free?
I asked.
Yes. Now Sunset Shimmer, you mentioned about where you came from, and you have certainly garnered my interest. It's strange, but the word Equestria reminds me of something. I cannot grasp what it truly means, but I envision a world where horses live, and that I am there as a princess. It sounds rather strange, but somehow it all feels right in my heart,
replied Twilight. It looked like Twilight's alicorn magic managed to survive the transition from Equestria to this world, and because of that she was recalling bits and pieces of what is really meant to be. At least I had someone who would believe what I had to say, but I had to handle it with care as Twilight still views herself as the Princess of Hyrule.
Your world sounds like a wonderful place to live in, but then that is your enjoyment and not mine, I suppose. Ahem, so yes, if Ganondorf were to obtain the Triforce, he would wield the power of the Golden Goddesses. Such a fate must never come to pass. Then what can we do about it?
I asked.
We are the only ones now who can stop him from claiming the Triforce and conquering Hyrule. I know that it sounds like quite the daunting task, but there is no one else that I can turn to. Please, Sunset Shimmer, lend us your strength in this time of crisis and prevent the darkness from consuming the light of this world,
replied Twilight.
I shall,
I nodded.
Thank you, Sunset Shimmer.
Now, this is the plan that we must utilize if we are to prevent Ganondorf from succeeding. The Ocarina of Time is the most important item needed to open the door of time within the Temple of Time, so I shall protect it with all of my power. He will not get his hands on it so long as I draw breath. In the meantime, you will need to travel to both Death Mountain and Zora's Domain in order to obtain the remaining 2 spiritual stones.
If we can open the door and obtain the Triforce, we can defeat Ganondorf and peace will reign over Hyrule. Of the 2 locations that house the remaining stones, I suggest that you begin your search on Death Mountain. I also have this letter which I will give to you, for in order to be able to climb up Death Mountain, you need to have permission from my father, but then my word as princess is just as good as his,"
said Twilight.
"Do you think Ganondorf knows what we are planning?"
I asked.
"It is possible that he may be aware, but it is something that we cannot afford to worry about. Since the sun has now settled and the drawbridge closed, you will need to stay here for the night, and disguise yourself if you want to avoid any kind of suspicion,"
replied Twilight. Just when it looked like I was able to get a firm grasp of the situation, Twilight made it even more confusing than ever before. Now I know how Twilight must feel when she has to fulfill her duties in Equestria as an alicorn.
"Before you rest for the night, Sunset Shimmer, I would like you to talk to my attendant who stands over there. Do not be afraid of her, for she is most kind, and knows that you are one who can be trusted."
Twilight pointed me towards Applejack, who was standing a short distance away with her arms folded. I walked over to her in order to hear what she had to say.
"I saw you outside, and I knew that you would find your way here to see Zelda, for I sensed that you were someone special. My name is Impa, and I have been the loyal attendant of the princess ever since she was just a baby. Everything that the princess has told you regarding her dream is true, and that I too was also a part of it. Within her dream, my purpose was to teach a song to the one from the forest, and so now I shall teach this melody to you. It is an ancient song which has been passed down through the generations, but I have often sung this song as a lullaby to the princess. I notice that you are in possession of an ocarina,"
said Applejack.
"It was given to me as a memento from a friend, but I have yet to learn how to play it,"
I said.
"There is no need to feel ashamed, for I will be able to show you how to use it. This song is one that is only allowed to be known to the members of the royal family. By knowing this song, Sunset Shimmer, it will prove your connection to the royal family,"
said Applejack. She then placed her left hand onto her mouth, and began to whistle 3 distinct notes before repeating them again. Then she showed me which holes I had to cover with my fingers when playing the ocarina so that I could play the same notes. After about 15 minutes of trying to figure it out, I managed to learn the song Zelda's Lullaby, although shouldn't that be Twilight's lullaby instead?
"In the morning, I will secretly lead you out of the castle. May you have a good night's sleep."
The night passed by without incident, and Applejack was able to sneak me out of the castle as well as the town itself.
"You truly are a brave individual for taking up the cause of saving Hyrule." "I wouldn't say that I was brave or overly heroic, but I'll try my best,"
I said.
"You do not give yourself enough credit, Sunset Shimmer, for you have already accomplished much,"
said Applejack.
"Maybe, but you wouldn't be saying that if you knew what I used to be like,"
I said.
"What happened to you in the past is none of my business, so I shall not intrude upon you any further. Can you see the mountain off in the distance? That is where you must go in order to obtain the spiritual stone of fire from the Gorons. At the base of Death Mountain, you will find the village of Kakariko, where I was born and raised. You should talk to all of the villagers there in order to gain some information before you make the climb up Death Mountain." "All right, we are counting on you, Sunset Shimmer,"
said Applejack. She then took a few steps backward whilst clutching something in her hand, then she threw it, causing a bright white flash to occur. When my vision was restored a few seconds later, Applejack was gone completely, as though she had simply vanished into nothingness.
"What in the world was that?"
I asked Spike.
"That would be the blinding effects of the Deku Nut, which can be very effective when dealing with enemies. Anyway, we could make our way over to Death Mountain in order to acquire the second spiritual stone, or we could always pay a visit to Kokiri Forest and see how everyone's been doing since we left on our journey,"
replied Spike.
"We've only been gone for over a day, Spike, so the odds of them wondering about us seems pretty low. If we had been gone for say, 7 years for example, then they would have a reason to wonder,"
I said.
"Yeah, I guess you have a point there, so what do you want to do?"
asked Spike.
"I was thinking that we could go back to Lon Lon Ranch, and see about getting that tour Apple Bloom, I mean, Malin mentioned when we first met her.
The last time we
were there, we didn't really get to see what the ranch had to offer as only the farmhand was around, and he wasn't exactly the friendliest person. Perhaps now we can get a real glimpse at what they do there,"
I replied.
"But what about the forest? The mountain?"
asked Spike.
"Here's what we're going to do, okay? First, we'll pay a visit to Lon Lon Ranch because I could do with some relaxing, especially after what I experienced back at the castle, and I need some time to let the notion of saving the world sink in. Second, we'll go to the Kokiri Forest in order to see how everyone's doing, and I actually want to speak to Fluttershy about a couple of things that I didn't tell her before we left. Finally, after doing the previous 2 things, we'll make our way over to Kakariko Village in order to climb up Death Mountain, and proceed with our quest,"
I replied.
"Okay, that does sound reasonable, but do you know how many days that might take?"
asked Spike.
"At the most, 2, as long as we aren't distracted by monsters attacking us in Hyrule Field if we end up traveling about at night. Hopefully, we can avoid traversing the field when the sun is down by staying the night in the appropriate locations,"
I replied. With my mind made up, Spike and I made our way back to Lon Lon Ranch, and arrived there within the hour. The sounds of horses could be heard everywhere, which meant that things must be pretty lively, but my joy soon turned a little sour when I noticed Big Macintosh was walking towards me with that same expression he had before.
"If it isn't the forest girl who came here last time,"
said Big Macintosh.
"Yes, it's me again,"
I said sarcastically.
The owner of the ranch and her granddaughter returned just after sunrise from their trip to the castle, and do you know what each of them decides to do straight away? That lazy bum Talon decided to go into the house in order to check out her cuckoos, and right now I can hear snoring coming from within, which means that she's gone and fallen asleep again. As for her granddaughter, she's over by the corral singing blissfully while all of the horses are just running around aimlessly without any kind of supervision, and do you know who is stuck doing all of the work?"
asked Big Macintosh.
You?"
I answered.
Yup. While I do appreciate that you managed to get those 2 back to the ranch, I wish that you had just left them alone at the castle. Yup. To me, you look to be one of them. They're heroic types who go around doing good deeds because you believe in justice and whatnot. I ain't got nothing wrong with that or with you for doing it, but Talon and Malin make me seething mad. I've had it up to here having to do everything around here while those 2 do nothing but be lazy, and see everything as full of sunshine and rainbows. I, the hard-working Ingo, should be in charge of this ranch and not that lazy bum Talon,"
said Big Macintosh.
"Is that how you really feel?"
I asked.
Yup,
answered Big Macintosh. That was when he decided to go into another building, mumbling to himself about why he should be running things. After my unpleasant encounter with Big Mac, I walked into the corral and saw all of the various horses galloping and trotting, and it reminded me of Equestria once again, and how I'd missed running around on 4 hooves instead of 2 legs. I couldn't help but be jealous of these horses being what they are, and here I am in a human body due to me giving myself self-exile from the land of my birth. Sometimes, I just hate myself for having abandoned my studies all in the name of wanting power and becoming a princess in my own right. Apple Bloom was singing away when I reached her, but she stopped singing when she noticed me walking up to her.
"You're Sunset Shimmer, right? I had a feeling that you were going to come here and pay us a visit,"
said Apple Bloom.
"Well, you insisted that I come here and take the grand tour,"
I said.
"I wouldn't say that it was a grand tour, but I'll still show you around, seeing as I did say that I would the next time you were here. Before I begin, I want to say thank you for finding Granny in the castle. I love her to pieces, but sometimes I think she needs to do a bit more of the chores so as to stay active and not fall asleep. Anywho, over there is the house where we all live, and that does include Ingo as well. Opposite the house is the stable where the horses and cattle reside, and way in the back is a small shed built into the wall which houses some crates of milk which we store for delivery purposes. Finally, there is the corral where we are standing right now, which serves as the heart of the ranch,"
said Apple Bloom.
"I've got to admit that I'm impressed with what you do around here,"
I said.
"But?"
asked Apple Bloom.
"That Ingo seems to be rather cold and heartless when it comes to the workload around here,"
I replied.
"Ingo has been acting that way for some time now, where he constantly complains about having to do everything himself."
He was a completely different person back when
Granny first hired him, for back then, he was a much nicer guy who was so enthusiastic about working on the ranch. "Maybe I should talk to Granny about Ingo's attitude, because he does seem to be getting more irritable in recent days,"
said Apple Bloom.
"That's a good idea,"
I began, but before I could say another word, I felt a soft bump at my side which made me wonder just what had bumped into me. For what seemed like forever, I found myself staring directly into the eyes of a small red pony, with a white mane, but then my reaction kicked in soon after.
"Wah!"
My outburst caused the little horse to freak out and gallop off while I dropped to my knees clutching my chest. What was it about this one pony that made me have a reaction like that just now? Was it because it reminded me of Equestria, the home that I abandoned long ago? My friend Twilight Sparkle, who was an alicorn princess there? Or maybe seeing this little pony made me think of myself in that I was related to it and all of the others around here? I mean, I'm a talking pony, mind you, with magical powers, whereas these horses were, well, just ordinary horses. As I got back onto my feet after my outburst, Apple Bloom looked at me with an awkward glance.
"You're the first person I've ever seen react that way in front of a pony, but I suppose it's due to you being from the forest," she said.
Maybe seeing that pony reminded me of the unicorn that I used to be, young and full of potential and above, completely innocent and vulnerable to any kind of influence.
"Anyway, this is the friend that I wanted to introduce you to. Her name is Epona, and she has the potential of growing up to be a mighty fine horse one day." "Hey? What's wrong? Why are you crying, Sunset Shimmer?" "Hearing you say reminds me of my own childhood,"
I replied, and that certainly was the case. Why did I have to see that reflection in that stupid mirror? If I never saw that image of me as an alicorn, I would have remained in Equestria, where I could have become a fine student of Princess Celestia, and perhaps become an alicorn over time. But if I never took the path that I did, I wouldn't have the friends that I do now. Seeing this little pony is making me feel so conflicted right now, but I can't take my frustration out on the pony, or on Apple Bloom, as neither deserve it. This is what Ganondorf meant when he said that he wanted me to suffer for his own amusement. He wants me to go through emotions like this, and on a regular basis, in order to see how long it would take before I finally snapped. Well, it was working well so far. I knew there and then that my internal torment was only going to get worse from me, but I had to try and keep my emotions under control as I attempt to save this world.
I'm sorry for that sudden outburst,
I said as I wiped away my tears.
If it's okay with you, Apple Blue Malin, I'd like to play some music using my ocarina. It might help me to calm my nerves a little. Now, that's a cute little ocarina you have there,
said Apple Bloom.
Thanks. It was given to me as a memento by a dear friend of mine,
I said.
How would you like to learn this here song which I was singing before you arrived?
Who knows? It might be just the thing you need to help you deal with whatever
issues you have inside of you. I'll sing you the notes and then you can play them back,
said Apple Bloom. She then sung the notes, which I found were easy to play on the ocarina. Those pointers Applejack gave me in the castle were already paying off as I managed to play
Epona's song without any problems. Wait a minute. Epona. Isn't that the name of the pony, who made me feel depressed about my childhood? It was. But why teach me a song about a pony, who made me cry? Apple Bloom then continued talking. That was a pretty good melody you played there, Sunset Shimmer. I was given some pointers from another friend, so if anyone is to be thanked, it would have to be her,
I said.
She sounds like a really good friend,
smiled Apple Bloom.
That she is,
I smiled back.
Now there's that wonderful smile I saw from you back when we first. I knew learning my song was just what you needed, and it looks like you have made a new friend,
said Apple Bloom as she pointed towards Epona, who was now trying to push me forward, but this time she wasn't making any kind of sound, and I wasn't making any kind of reaction.
Epona has grown really fond of you, Sunset Shimmer, and that is something that only I have managed to achieve. I reckon I don't know what's going on in that head of yours, but know that you'll have a friend here through Epona and myself. Thank you.
That means so much to me. Even though we've only known each other for a short amount of time, it feels like I've known you for years. Listen, I know you
might think this is rude of me, but I need to get going as I do have a lot of things that need to be taken care of,
I said.
Not at all. Before you go, Sunset Shimmer, why don't you take a look inside of that shed at the far end of the ranch? I recall seeing a large heart-shaped object hidden away through a crawl space when I went in there in order to check on some inventory about a week ago. No one here has any use for it, so feel to take it with you. Y'all come back here anytime you want, but why not say hello to Granny after you get that heart? You could use some delicious and nutritious lawn milk in you right now, and I reckon Granny will give you a bottle to take with you on your journey,
said Apple Bloom. As I smiled back at her and began to make my way towards the shed, I failed to notice Flash Sentry had been watching over me the entire time, but decided to urge his giant owl to move on instead of talking to me. What I didn't know though, was that something was happening back at Hyrule Castle involving the king, the captain of the royal guards, and Ganondorf.
Are you certain of this shining armor?
Asked the king.
Yes, my king. I can confirm that the entourage that accompanied Lord Ganondorf have indeed departed the town and returned home. One of my guards informed me that the one called Naburu issued the order for them to leave, and suggested that I come here to inform both you and Lord Ganondorf. I apologize for bringing you this most unfortunate news,
replied Shining Armor.
And what of the incident that took place between the guards and Ganondorf's entourage?
Asked the king.
That situation has been taken care of, my king,
replied Shining Armor.
What do you make of this Ganondorf?
Asked the king.
I'm not sure what to make of the fact that my own servants decided to return to our fortress without my approval. But, I suppose that Neighboru must have had her reasons for wanting to go back. This may be sudden, Your Majesty, but I would like to request another meeting between the two of us in order to finalize the alliance between our tribes. I need to return to the Gerudo's fortress in order to resolve a small misunderstanding,
replied Tyrek.
Does it involve your second in command?
Asked Shining Armor.
Humph. You would be wise to keep your guards' tongues in their mouths, Your Majesty, especially your captains, for speaking out about matters that do not concern them. What goes on in the Gerudo's fortress right now is a concern of the Gerudo and no other tribe. Do I make myself clear on that matter, Captain? Ahem. I must apologize for my harsh rhetoric, Your Majesty, for both the captain and I spoke out of line, and I hope that the alliance will be carried out as intended. I shall take my leave of you and send a messenger to confirm our next meeting in the coming days,
replied Tyrek as he walked out of the throne room and closed the door behind him.
I did not mean to speak so, my king,
said Shining Armor.
You did what you thought was best given the current circumstances, Shining Armor, but I suppose that we must now wait for Ganondorf to inform me as to when he wishes for this next meeting to take place. Now then, tell about what happened outside regarding that commotion between the guards and the Gerudo. While the situation may be resolved as you say, I wish to know what happened out there,
said the king.
How dare Neighboru defy my command?
It would seem then that her loyalty to the Gerudo remains unbreakable, while her loyalty to me has become strained, and is on the verge of shattering into pieces strewn across the ground. I suspected that she could no longer be trusted when my dear mothers informed me that she had been sneaking off to the temple in the desert for some time now. I had hoped that Neighboru would one day learn to appreciate my vision for Hyrule by choosing to be utterly faithful to my will, but it seems that she has become a lost cause, and must now be dealt with. Not right now, of course, for my people still look up to her and view her in the same manner as they do for me, but soon Neighboru will come to realize the price one must be willing to pay if they defy me. To be continued. Chapter 4, Beginnings of Revelations.